Welcome to the Wing Space podcast, a place to take up space, a space for you to settle in, sit back, relax, and focus a little bit on health, wellness, faith, family, and this crazy thing called life.
This podcast is not a replacement for mental health treatment or professional health care. In case of crisis or emergency, please contact your local healthcare provider or dial 911.
Hey there, and welcome to the Wing Space podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about spring sports and how to prepare for the next season. So glad that you're with me today. If you are like me, we are gearing up for spring sport season. I'm recording this the week before spring sport tryouts start for my kids. And we are a family that doesn't do a winter sport. Don't hate me for this, but we have had the winter off. My kids go to the gym. They stay pretty active during the winter, but we do not have organized sports in the winter. We have before. So we're gearing up for the spring sports season, and I just thought I would share some tips and some tricks for what I do to help with this season. My boys play football and lacrosse, and lacrosse tends to be, it feels like a busier season to me. I don't know why, but for some reason it does. Lacrosse starts next week. I'm super excited. By the time you listen to this, you may already be in the thick of your spring season. So I hope just a couple of these thoughts and ideas will be helpful for you just as you go forward in your season and in upcoming seasons. Here's the thing too. This applies for any season of sport, not just spring. You know, one of the things that if you know me personally or professionally, you know that I am a planner. You know that I have a calendar, I write everything down, I make lists. It's kind of a thing for me, right? But not everyone is like that, and I totally understand. However, when we're looking at practice schedules, game schedules, carpool schedules, snack schedules, what uniform you got to wear, where you got to be, it really is important to have a calendar. And I have found that it's really important if everybody's on the same page. We've tried a couple of different family calendars in my home, and I'll be honest with you, it hasn't really worked. As my kids get older, I think we're probably going to shift to having to use like a Google Calendar. Everybody's got a Gmail, so we can use a Google Calendar, and that would work. But we just talk about like, okay, what's happening this weekend? What's happening this week? You know, we have dinner together pretty much every night. So we just talk about what's going on. Communication can be so key and vital in these busy seasons. So think about what might work for you from a family calendar perspective. If you have little people, it might be a big calendar in your kitchen, and maybe it's color coded so that they know blue means practice days or however that works for them. If you have older kids, I know there's different apps that you can use, but also a Google Calendar, just so everyone's on the same page. What you want to avoid is, oh, I didn't know I had a game. I didn't know I had practice. I didn't know I needed that. I didn't, whatever it is, fill in the blank. You want to avoid that because the season is already like exciting from a game and practice perspective, but it can also be stressful because of all the things that are going on. And you just want to avoid that stress. So avoid the, oh, I didn't know, by having clear communication with your family about game schedules, practice schedules. And I will tell you, I love my teenage boys, but they're terrible communicators. So if you're relying on your kid, your teenager, to share information with you, then you're probably missing information. And if there's any coaches out there listening, I would also say that if you are relying on your players to communicate information with their parents, some coaches prefer like one app where everyone can communicate together. Other coaches have a way to communicate with the parents and a way to communicate with the kids, like however it works. And we've been on different teams that have done it different ways. But you have to make sure that the parents are getting the information, because the parents are the ones driving. The parents are the ones that are planning and preparing for these things. Even my senior in high school needs to make sure that mom knows what's going on for the sake of everything. Communication, so key. And as we look at this idea of communicating, right, we're talking about planning and preparing, there's a key component of sports, and that is it's typically after school, after work, right in the middle of dinner time. So how do you How do you manage that? Again, I know that not everybody is a planner, but I want you to just consider a couple of little nuggets of information that you might take with you. Consider what works for your family. I have friends who they prefer a after school dinner and then maybe a snack after practice or a game. I have my own children who do not want to eat before practice or a game. They can't have all that food in their stomach. They might have a snack, but they're not going to have dinner. So we have tried various different things over the course of a very long time in spring sports or in sports in general. And before practice, dinner doesn't work for us, but it might work for you. And so instead of, having your kids grab, a cheese stick and some, chips or something like that as a snack when they come home, maybe there's already something in the crock pot. Maybe you've made some sandwiches ahead of time. Maybe, there's a pot of spaghetti that's already done. Whatever it works, right? Planning ahead. And we know that meal planning is a whole nother podcast, probably a whole nother podcast series for a whole nother time. But maybe it's a meal so that everybody can eat before you go. In my house, we have preferred kind of a snack of some kind, and then we eat after. And that does mean that we eat late sometimes. And it's just what works for us, because I know that my kids don't want to eat before games and before practice. And it's kind of what works. Here's the other thing to keep in mind. You've heard me say it before. I said it earlier in this episode. My family, we eat dinner together almost every night. There are some one-offs when somebody's not home or something's different, but typically we always eat dinner together. Sometimes it's okay to say that that's not going to work. In the fall, my one son was playing football, and we had this he would come home right about the time that my husband and the other kiddo wanted to go to the gym. So what we would do is I would prepare dinner, and my older son and my husband would eat dinner. And then when the younger son came home, I'd sit down and eat dinner with him. So we were all having dinner. It was kind of this, dance in the kitchen as people were coming and going. But we had to be flexible because that's what the schedule required. So understanding that sometimes there has to be some flexibility about who eats when. If you have children with wide age ranges, right, the little kiddos probably need to eat early because they're going to bed as soon as they get home. Whereas the older kids, they're going to be doing homework when they get home. So there is sometimes this interesting, I'll use the word again, this interesting dance of who's eating when. But planning and preparing for that so that dinner hour doesn't hit and then everybody's starving and there's nothing to eat, right? Or then it's, okay, we're going to run through this drive-through, we're going to run through that drive-through. I would encourage you to consider using the takeout card wisely. Kids can sometimes get into a really bad habit of always wanting to eat out. It's quick, it's easy, they think it tastes good. And especially if they come off the field, and this has happened to me, they come off the field and they're ravenous, right? I told you before, my kids don't eat before practice. So they're hungry when they come off the field. If we're at an away game or a faraway practice, there's how many fast food restaurants between there and home. They want to stop, they're hungry. Sometimes it's easier just to say, okay, fine, we'll stop. But we don't want to get them into that habit because they've just done some really great physical activity. They're moving their bodies, they're being healthy, and we don't want to just fill them with fast food or takeout food. So you want to use that takeout card wisely. What I have done is pack food so that as soon as they jump in the car and they're like, Mom, I'm so hungry, can we stop for something to eat? I'll grab the cooler and I've already made them sandwiches or subs or something and they can just eat on the way home. They sometimes grumble because they have already worked up an appetite and in the field they're already thinking about what they want to eat. And so they usually say, can we stop at? And then I hand them, a sandwich from home, and they might grumble about it, but allowing them to eat as soon as they say, I'm hungry, here it is. And then knowing that maybe that means that I'm going to eat on the sideline. Maybe that means, I'm going to have my dinner earlier without them. Or maybe I'm going to eat on the way home too. It just depends on kind of what the day looks like. The biggest, most important thing to take away from this conversation is plan ahead. Again, bigger conversation for a bigger day, but I typically on Saturday look at my week ahead so I can make my grocery list and I can plan what meals I'm going to cook. Now, when I talk about meal planning, I'm not talking about all the little containers set up and you prep, 20 pounds of chicken and all these vegetables and you're meal prepping. It's not what I'm talking about in this scenario. I'm talking about planning. Sunday, we're going to have this for dinner. Monday, we're going to have this for dinner. Tuesday, we're going to have this for dinner. And knowing what nights we have games is really helpful. I am fortunate that I have a teenage driver now, which means he will bring his brother home from practice, him and his brother home from practice. So when they get home at 6 o'clock, dinner can be ready and on the table. That is a luxury that I know a lot of parents who are listening don't have because you're the one that's driving the kiddos. Crock-pots, Instapot, cold meals are great ways to avoid that hustle and bustle situation. But knowing what we're going to have for dinner, knowing that, okay, Monday we have a game, this is what we're going to do for dinner, this is what I'm going to have available for the boys, etc., etc. Having an idea of what we're doing, buying the food at the store, and being prepared for that. Now, when we talk about being prepared, I would also encourage you to consider, are you the person that's going to have the mom bag? Now, I am the carrier of the mom bag, and I know that not everyone is able or interested in being the carrier of the mom bag. But all the kids even know when we've gone to tournaments, hey, Miss Vorhar, hey, Miss Jen. I've had some pretty obscure things asked of me before at tournaments. When I had a kid ask me at a lacrosse tournament up in PA a couple years ago for a pair of scissors, and I just grabbed them out and handed them to him, he looked at me and I heard my older son say, "See, I told you she'd have them." So when the kids are in high school, we don't really need the mom bag as much, right? Because they're on the field. We're not really having a touch point with them at all. The coach has everything that they need, hopefully. But there's certainly been times where I've got, before a game, I've received a text from a kiddo that says, "Hey, Mom, do you have?" So even in our high school stadiums where we're not allowed to bring bag, there's been times that I bring my bag, I leave it in the car, I check in with my kiddo before I leave the car. "Hey, do you need anything? I'm walking into the stadium." Things like extra mouth guards, extra socks, extra water bottles, the things that are typically lost, that are partially necessity, but partially just make it easier for them to be successful on the field. Having those things readily available. And I have my bag, my stuff. It's kind of like a go bag, and it's ready. I don't have to pack my bag. Once lacrosse season is up and running, I actually have on my list, on my to-do list for next week, is prepare for lacrosse season. And that means I'm going to set aside my stadium chairs. It's still going to be cold. So I'm going to have a blanket and I'm going to have hot hands. And then I'm going to know that at some point I'm going to have to shift and I'm going to have to make sure I have sunscreen and maybe bug spray. I might need to have an umbrella that's close by. Considering what I am going to need while I'm sitting on the sidelines or in the stands watching my kids play. Because my comfort is just as important as theirs. They're running around on the field. They don't realize that it's 20 degrees because they're hot because they're running around. But in the wintertime, I need hot hands. I need a blanket. I need that stadium chair because the stadium gets super cold with those metal seats. You might think of if you are in a younger kid sport and you are right there on the sideline where they might run over to you, do you have a first aid kit? Do you have those, extra tape and scissors and Band-Aids and just random things that they might need? I always keep an ice pack in my bag because, you have 2 or 3 kids that get hurt, the coach is going to run out of ice packs. So I always keep an ice pack. Towels, if it's going to rain, bring some towels, be prepared. If it's super, super hot, you can get those towels that you can shove in some ice water and wet them for your kiddos. Considering how you can make life easy, because what you don't want to happen is that you're at a game and the kid says, "Mom, I forgot." And then you think, "Oh, what are we going to do?" Or you sit down for the game and then you realize, "Oh, I forgot," right? You go to get out of your car and you forgot your stadium seat. Even worse, if you're not in a stadium, you forget your camp chair and there's no place to sit. Now you have to stand for an hour or more to during a game. So being prepared for that season. Some of you are in the midst of a winter sport, which is likely indoors. And so you have to be in the mindset of shifting from indoor sport to outdoor sport. So you may have to have the go bag contents ready to shift the indoor sport stuff with the outdoor sport stuff. There have definitely been times that we have been sitting at a game and a parent will say, "Hey Jen, do you have," right? Sunscreen, bug spray, hot hands, extra socks, mouth guards, all the things I've already mentioned. It's so helpful to have the things that you or your kiddo might need. That brings me to second to last point is connect with other parents. For better or worse, I'll say there has been at least one time in my kids' lacrosse and football careers that another parent has said, "Oh my gosh, do you have an inhaler?" Should you share them? No, I realize that. Don't criticize. But I remember distinctly one time there was a kiddo that had asthma. He wasn't having a full on asthma attack, but he definitely needed a couple puffs of an inhaler, and his inhaler wasn't in his bag. We have a kiddo with asthma. We had an inhaler. He was able to use it. She knew she could come to me and say, "Hey, do you have?" Right? And I'm not afraid to stand up in the stadiums and say, "Hey, parents, anybody got?" Right? So don't be afraid to connect with other parents. It's great for supplies. If you are the parent that has to come straight from work to the game, you need kids to be picked up, carpooling, that planning and preparing that you may not be able to do because your job or your circumstances don't allow you to. Connect with other parents. We hear it all the time that it takes a village. It takes a village. We need people that can pick our kid up from home and take them to practice or bring them home from practice, or, "Hey, do you mind packing an extra sandwich for my kiddo today? I just totally ran out of time. Do you have some extra water bottles?" Connect with other parents because it's going to help make things so much easier. Last thing, consider how you can multitask. I know that being a parent, if you're a working outside of the home parent, if you are a parent of multiple kiddos, especially across a wide range of ages, it can be difficult to fit it all in. Consider how you can multitask. I've had folks say to me before, "Well, I don't know when I'm going to exercise because, I leave work, I pick up the kids, I take them to practice, we come home, we got to make dinner, etc., etc." What are you doing during that hour to 2 hours during practice? Now, there's certainly times that you might be chatting with other moms, connecting with other moms, planning for the calendar and for the games ahead. But maybe you could go for a walk around the field. You could go for a run if you're a runner. You could go into the corner and do some body weight exercises, right? Consider how you can multitask. I've definitely sat at the field before and done work because I had to scoot out of work early in order to go pick up the kids to get to practice. So now I've got my laptop or I've got some papers I'm reviewing or something. I've certainly dropped the kids off before and gone and run an errand. So, oh man, I forgot to plan for dinner. I'm going to go run to Subway, grab those subs for them real quick, and I'll be back so that I have the food for them when they jump in the car and they say they're starving. But consider how you can use their time that they're at the field to the best of your ability. It's really interesting because now that my son is driving, I don't have to go to the high school and wait for them to finish practice, which means I'm not going to be able to walk or run for that last 30 to 45 minutes of practice. And it's going to be interesting as we prepare for this season of what I'm going to do during the time that they're at practice. Planning ahead, even if it's just beginning to think about things, it doesn't have to be rigid, it doesn't have to be this really rigid schedule, but just planning ahead and preparing, knowing what's ahead of you, knowing what you might need, knowing what your kids might need. I consider it an honor to be able to be available to the other families, the other players on the. I've historically been a team mom, and I consider it an honor for somebody to say, "Hey, hey, Miss Vorhar, do you have?" Or, "Hey, Mom, do you have this for so and so?" "Hey, Miss Jen, do you have?" I like that. It makes me feel happy to be like, "Hey, I got it right here." And it's kind of like the Pandora's box, right? What's Miss Jen got in her bag now? You don't have to be that. We don't need 40 mom bags on the side of the field, but it is nice to be able to have those connections with the moms, the dads that do. So my apologies to any dads or grandparents out there that are the holder of the mom bag, just speaking from my own experience. I will wish you well for those parents that are coming out of your winter season. Congratulations, you did it. Those of us that are going into spring season, I wish you well. I wish you warm days ahead. I know here in Maryland, it's gosh, I think it'll be in the 50s today. But I can guarantee that over the course of the next month, there's going to be days where it's freezing cold while we're sitting in those stands watching the boys play lacrosse. So I wish you warm, sunny days ahead. Don't forget your sunscreen. Don't forget to hydrate and fuel yourselves. And don't forget to have fun, because these, they say that, I don't know, the days go slow, but the years go fast or something like that. And as a mom of a senior, I don't know how we got here so fast. I have no idea how we got here, but I am looking forward to savoring every single game, every single minute of this upcoming season. And I would hope that you would enjoy all the opportunities that you have to connect with your kids, connect with other parents, connect with your sports family, and enjoy life. So I would love to hear what ideas you have about how you plan and prepare for your sport season. You can always email me, Jennifer, at hopehealingtherapy.com, or feel free to shoot us a DM on our socials. We'd love to hear from you, share ideas, tricks, and tips with each other. So thanks for listening, and have a great day.